Just for a moment, I say, trying to reassure him. But it was an error. Xander's my match. This other boy wasn't even in the matching pool at all. Grandfather doesn't sit down, even though I remain in the chair, helping to calm him down, to make him see that it is all alright. Did they say why he was classified that way? His father did something, I say. It isn't Kai's fault. And it isn't. I know it. And grandfather knows it. The officials never would allow the adoption if Kai himself had been a threat. My grandfather looks at his plate, where it clattered from the tray and onto the floor. I move to pick it up, but he stops me. No, he says, his voice sharp, and he bends creakily, as if he were made of old wood. An old tree, stiff wooden joints. He pushes the last piece of food back on his plate, and then he looks at me with clear eyes. Nothing stiff about them. They are alive, full of movement. I don't like it, he says. Why would someone change your microcard? Grandfather, I say, please sit down. It's a prank, and they'll find out who did it and take care of everything. An official from the matching department said so herself. I wish I hadn't told them. Why did I think it would be comfort in telling? But now there is. That poor boy, grandfather says, his voice sad. He's been marked through no fault of his own. Do they know him well? Do you know him well? We're friends, but not that close. I've seen him sometimes during free rec hours on Saturdays, I explain. He receives his permanent work position a year ago, and so I don't see him much anymore. And what is his work position? I hesitate to tell grandfather because it is such a dismal one. We are all surprised when Kai receives such a lowly assignment, since Patrick and Adria were well respected. He works in the nutrition disposal center. Grandfather makes a grimace. That's hard, unfulfilling work. I know, I say. I've noticed that, in spite of the gloves and workers wear, Kai's hands are permanently red from the heat of the water and machines. But he does not complain. And the officials let you tell me this? Grandfather said. Yes, I say. I asked her if I could tell one person, you. Grandfather's eyes gleam mischievously because the dead can't talk. No, I say. I love grandfather's jokes, but I can't joke back, not about this. It's coming too quickly. I will miss him too much. I wanted to tell you because I knew you would understand. Ah, grandfather said, raising his eyebrows in a weary expression. And did I? Now I'm laughing a little. Not as well as I hoped. You acted like my parents would have, if I told them. Of course I did, he said. I want to protect you. Not always, I say, raising my eyebrows back at him. Grandfather is one who finally made me stop sitting at the edge of the pool. He joined us one summer day and asked, what is she doing? That's what she does, Xander says. Can't she swim? Grandfather asked. And I glared at him because I could speak for myself, and he knew that. She can, Xander says. She just doesn't like to do it. I don't like the jumping in part, I informed grandfather. I see, he said. What about the diving board? Especially not that. All right, he told me. He sat next to me on the edge, even bank then. He was younger and stronger. I remember thinking how old he looked compared to my friend's grandparents. My grandparents were one of the last couples who chose to be matched later in life. They were 35 when they were matched. My father, their one child, wasn't born until 4 years later. Now no one is allowed to have children after they turn 31. The sun shone right through the silvery hair. It made me see each strand even when I wasn't looking for such detail. It made me sad, even though he made me angry. This is exciting, he said, kicking his feet in the water. I can see how you never want to do anything but sit. I heard the teasing in his voice, and I turned away. And then he stood up and walked towards the diving board. Sir, said the water guard in charge of the pool. Sir, I have a recreational pass, grandfather told her, not stopping. I am in excellent health. And he climbed to the ladder of the diving board, and looking stronger and stronger than the higher he climbed. He didn't look over at me before he jumped. He went right in. Before he broke through the surface of the water, I was on my feet, walking across the hot wet cement to the high dive ladder. The soles of my feet and the pride both on fire. And I jumped. You're thinking of the pool, aren't you? He asked me now. Yes, I said, laughing a little. You didn't keep me safe then. You practically dared me to leap to my death. And then I cringed because I didn't mean to say that word. I don't know why I'm afraid of it. Grandfather isn't. The society isn't. I shouldn't be. Grandfather doesn't seem to notice. You were ready to jump, he says. You just weren't sure of it yet. We both fall silent, remembering I try not to look at the timepiece on the wall. I have to leave soon, so I can make it back by curfew. But I don't want Grandfather to think I am marking the minutes, marking time until our visit is over, marking time until his life is over. Although if you think about it, I am marking the time before my own life too. Every minute spent with someone gives you part of your life and takes part of theirs. Grandfather senses my distraction, asks me what is on my mind. I tell him because I don't have any more chances to do so. And he reaches out and grips my hand. I'm glad to give you part of my life, he says. And such a nice thing to say. He says it so kindly that I say it back, even though he is almost 80, even though his body seems frailer earlier, his grip feels stronger, and I feel sad. There's something else I wanted to tell you, I say to Grandfather. I signed up for hiking as my summer leisure activity. He looks so pleased. They brought that back? Grandfather used to hike as one of the leisure activities years ago, and he talked about it ever since. It's new this summer. I've never seen it offered before. I wonder who the instructor is, he says thoughtfully. Then he looks out the window. I wonder where they'll take you to hike. I follow his gaze again. It isn't much wilderness out there, though there's plenty of green space, parks, and recreational fields. Maybe one of the larger recreational areas, I say. Maybe to the hill, he says, the light returning to his eyes. The hill is the last place in the city that has been left forested and wild. I can see it now, the prickly green back rising out of the arboretum where my mother works. It was once mostly used for the army training, but since most of the army has been moved out of the outer provinces, it isn't as much needed for it anymore. Do you think so? I asked, excited. I've never been there before. I mean, I've been to the arboretum lots of times, but I've never had permission to go to the hill. You'll love it if they let you go hike on the hill, Grandfather says, his face animated. There's something about climbing to the highest point. You can see there's no one clearing a path for you. No simulators, everything's real. Do you really think they're gonna let us hike there? I asked. His enthusiasm is contagious. I hope so. Grandfather gazes down out the window and into the direction of the arboretum. I wonder if the reason he spends so much time looking out lately is because he likes to remember what he carries within. It is as though he could read my mind. There's nothing but an old man sitting here thinking about memories, aren't I? I smile. There's nothing wrong with doing that. In fact, at the end of life, it is encouraged. That's not exactly what I'm doing, Grandfather says. Oh, I'm thinking. Again, he knows my thoughts. And not that same as remembering. Remembering is part of thinking, but not all of it. What am I thinking about? Many things. A poem, an idea, your grandmother. My grandmother died earlier. The one of the last kinds of cancers. She was only 62. I never knew her. The compact was hers before it was mine. A gift from her mother-in-law, Grandfather's mother. What do you think she would say about my match? I ask him. About what happened today. He's quiet, and I wait. I think, he says finally, she would ask you if you're worried. Ask you if you wondered. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but I heard the bell ringing, announcing the final air train for the Borgerefs will be coming soon, and I have to go. Cassia, Grandfather says as I stand up. You still have the compact I gave you, don't you? Yes, I say, surprised that he would ask. It's the most valuable thing I own, the most valuable thing I will ever own. Will you bring it to my final banquet tomorrow? He asks. Tears well up in my eyes. He must want to see it again, to remember my grandmother and his mother. Of course I will, Grandfather. Thank you. My tears threaten to spill over onto my cheeks as I bend down to kiss them. I hold them back. I don't cry. I wonder when I can. It won't be tomorrow night at the final banquet. People will be watching then, to see how Grandfather handles leaving, to see how we manage both being left. As I walk down the hall, I hear other residents talking to themselves, or to the visitors behind closed doors, and the sound of port turned up loud because many of the elderly cannot hear well. Some rooms are silent. Perhaps some are like Grandfather, sitting in front of the open window thinking about people who are no longer here. She would ask you if you wondered. I stepped into the elevator, pushed the button, feeling sad and strange and confused. What did he mean? I don't know. Grandfather's time is running out. I have known this for a long time, but why? As the elevator door slides shut, do I suddenly feel as mine is running out as well? My grandmother would have wanted to know if I wondered, if it wasn't a mistake after all, if Kai was meant to be my match. For a moment, I did. When I saw Kai's face flash in front of mine so quick, I couldn't have even seen the color of his eyes, only the dark of them as they looked back at me. I wondered, is it you?